How to gain weight with healthy keto while maintaining muscle mass. While the vast majority of people go into keto and intermittent fasting because they want to lose weight, there are also people who are thin and yet have insulin resistance or diabetes, or there are also those people who would like to gain weight but they don't want to eat a bunch of sugar and carbs and grains and junk food. So if you have trouble gaining weight, what do you do? That's today's topic, and we're going to cover all the angles so you know exactly how it works. Coming right up. I'm Dr. Ekberg. I'm a holistic doctor and a former Olympic decathlete. And if you want to truly master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss anything. The vast majority of advice about keto and intermittent fasting is aimed at people who are trying to lose weight, reverse diabetes, or insulin resistance. So just a quick recap that with those people, the people who are overweight and insulin resistant, whether it's full-blown diabetes or not, they are trying to reduce insulin, they're trying to reduce the stress hormone cortisol, they're trying to increase growth hormone, they're trying to reduce calories, and they're trying to reduce carbs. So that's the standard advice. And today we're going to talk about a couple of other cases where someone is either underweight or they just don't want to lose anymore, but they're still insulin resistant. They still have diabetes or they need to reverse their insulin levels. And we also have people who are underweight but insulin sensitive. They eat, no matter what they eat, it seems like they just can't gain weight. So if they're underweight and insulin resistant, the only change is that they're going to try to increase the calories. Okay? All the other steps are going to be identical. You still want to reduce insulin, you still want to reduce cortisol, you still want to increase growth hormone, and you still want to cut carbs. And when we say increase calories and reduce calories, the thing is that with keto and intermittent fasting, you're not trying to count calories or reduce calories. It just ends up that you eat less because you end up being full as you're burning the fat off the body. You get less hungry, you're satiated longer, you can go longer between meals, and you eat less. So that can be a problem when someone's trying to gain weight because the mechanism is still there, that they're not as hungry. So these people are going to have to try to eat more, and we'll talk about that. So that's really the only difference. Someone who is underweight and insulin sensitive, they're not trying to reduce insulin resistant, they're just not wanting to eat junk so that they develop problems over time and raise insulin resistance. So their insulin, they're trying to keep it about the same. They don't want to increase it, they don't need to decrease it. They still don't want to have more cortisol. Cortisol should be kept at a minimum or normal, what is appropriate for a normal, healthy, balanced life. So they don't want to start doing things to increase cortisol just to become more insulin resistant. Cortisol is destructive and it is muscle wasting, it's protein wasting. So all of these people, we are assuming that obviously they want to maintain their muscle. They're either trying to lose weight by losing fat, or they're trying to gain weight by gaining muscle, maybe a little fat as well. Growth hormone, everybody wants to increase because that's how you build muscle. Growth hormone is the hormone that builds muscle. And these people also are going to have to want to increase their calories as much as possible. So these people can increase carbs or maybe stay the same depending on where they are. They don't want to start loading up on carbs, and especially they don't want to start eating a bunch of junk carbs like processed carbs, sugar, grain, etc. They can eat some beans and some starchy vegetables like sweet potato, various different tubers. But they still want to keep their carbs in check because even though they're very insulin sensitive, they don't want to become insulin resistant. So they can tolerate a good bit more carbs, but you don't want to go overboard, obviously. Before we go further though, I just want everyone to really take some time and reflect on why are they trying to gain weight. Are you really too skinny, or are people just telling you that, or are you comparing yourself to an impossible ideal? What is normal? Okay? When I was competing in decathlon, I typically was about 200 to 205 pounds. My body fat was extremely low. Today my body fat's probably around 10%. When I was competing, it was around 3 to 4%. And I am 6'3", and today my comfortable body weight is 180 to 185 in pounds. For kilograms, you divide that by 2.2. But that's where I'm comfortable, and yet most people would probably tell me that I am too skinny. Or if they compare themselves to me, they say, oh, I wouldn't want to be that skinny. Well, that's normal for me. That's what my body likes to be. So don't compare yourself to supermodels or bodybuilders or some contrived ideal. Really be honest and figure out what is that normal place for your body. There are also some circumstances where the body may just not be quite healthy enough to gain weight, because it's a lot of work for the body to build new tissues. Maybe the body is really busy just repairing after a disease. So people who have had cancer or chemo, they shouldn't be in a hurry to gain weight. They should still eat healthy, but they should sort of go very, very slow and allow the body to do things at its own pace. It's sort of like growing grass. That grass is going to grow at the rate that grass is supposed to grow. You can't force it. You got to be patient. Let's talk about calories. Again, we don't necessarily typically emphasize calories too much. Everyone else does, but calories is usually not where it's at. However, if you want to gain weight and you are following a low-carb diet so that your hunger is reduced, you want to start counting calories and make sure that you get a lot of them. Because you have to be at a calorie surplus, and your body's set point is going to work against you in this case. Just like overweight people, they lose the weight and their body will often try to get them back up to the set point. The same thing holds true for you. If you're thin and you try to gain weight, your body is going to try to get back down to that set point. So again, make sure that you really want to change your weight or need to change your weight before you start forcing that set point away, because it might be, if you're successful, it might be harder to get back if you change your mind. But you need a calorie surplus. You need to eat a lot of food, and your body will compensate by raising its metabolism. So if you figure that you're burning 2,500 calories and you increase your ingestion, your consumption to 3,000, your body might just raise its basic metabolic rate to 3,000 and you have to go for 3,500. Everyone's different. Figure out how it works for you, but realize you have to be eating more calories than your body burns. It's not enough to ingest the calories. You also have to be able to digest and absorb them. And here again, you can put the stuff into your body, but if you don't have the right balance between insulin and cortisol and growth hormone, then your body is not going to know what to do with it. You need the growth hormone to make new tissue. You need some insulin to store the fuel, to help the fuel. Both insulin and growth hormone are anabolic hormone. They're building hormones. Cortisol is a catabolic. It's a breakdown hormone. So if you want to gain weight, you want to increase growth hormone, you want to decrease cortisol, limit cortisol, and it seems like you would want some more insulin, but If you're insulin resistant, then obviously we're still in the process of reducing insulin. So therefore we have to kind of still manage insulin with a low-carb diet. So if you have digestive issues or if you're stressed, then your digestion may not work the way it's supposed to, and you may not be able to utilize all of that fuel. So sugar is very, very easily absorbed. That's why people, even when they're unhealthy, they're still going to absorb all the carbs, but that's not going to help us because we want to reduce insulin. So when you eat fat and protein, your digestion has to be in tip-top shape. It has to be functioning at a high level in order for you to absorb these foods, otherwise they'll just go straight through you. A lot of people are eating plenty of protein, but they're still protein deficient. They're deficient in certain amino acids because they don't break them down and absorb them properly. So what you can do to help you there are digestive enzymes. There's a lot of them on the market. Talk to some people who know or who can counsel you. In my office, we muscle test and we evaluate each case individually depending on the person. But digestive enzymes can be very, very helpful, especially because after age 40, we lose the ability, our production of digestive enzymes tend to go down, and the older we get, the less enzymes we make. We also need a functioning gallbladder or a good liver output to digest fat. So if you have some gallbladder problems or if you have trouble digesting fats, you want to maybe supplement with some bile salts or some lecithin or some choline. You want to have some emulsifiers to break down that fat. And almost all the talk, all the advice about how to handle these issues in nutrition circles are about how many calories, what macros, what sort of nutrients, what sort of foods. But hardly anybody ever talks about what is it in the body that is able to digest and utilize that food. So the nervous system, your digestion does not function without your nervous system. So the healthier your brain is, the better your digestion works, and vice versa, because the gut also affects the brain. But if you have a healthy brain, you can digest things a whole lot better. A lot of stress interferes with the brain's ability to digest food. Stress shuts off the brain, stress shuts off digestion. So stress is the same as the sympathetic or the fight-flight. It produces cortisol, and the parasympathetic is your feed-breed. It's your relaxation response. And your digestive system, your ability to produce digestive enzymes, your ability to absorb food, your ability to build things out of food, your anabolic function is entirely 100% dependent on how well is that parasympathetic nervous system working, how well is that feed-breed system working. And if this one is taking a backseat to the sympathetic, to the fight-flight, then you are never going to have a digestive system that fires on all cylinders. Stress reduction is critical. And we want to understand, again, everyone's talking about how the food should be, how the nutrients should be. But if you don't absorb it, if you don't have a healthy brain, if you don't have a healthy gut, then it doesn't really matter so much what you eat. It's still important, but we can't just look at one side. We want to remember that the body has chemical components, chemical aspects, it has structural, mechanical aspects, and it has emotional aspects. And holistic health is about finding the balance on all of those. So the first two have to do with the chemical component. These are more of the standard advice as far as what to eat, the macros, etc. First of all, you have to eat more. And like we said, on keto, you're less hungry. With intermittent fasting, you're less hungry, so you have to make yourself eat. You want to count the calories to make sure that you're getting enough and that you're getting more than you think you need. And you don't want to increase carbs. You don't want to increase protein, so that leaves fat. Correct. Fat is the type of food, that's the macro that you increase. If you are insulin resistant, then you want to keep your carbs very, very low. Your body has, if you're insulin resistant, you have a very poor carbohydrate tolerance, and you probably want to keep them under 30 grams per day, under 30 grams of net carbs. Again, if you want to be in ketosis, you need to measure the ketones so that you know if you're actually in. If you are very insulin sensitive, if you're just skinny and you can't put on weight, but you've done the test, your blood sugar is low, your A1C is low, your fasting insulin is low, then you probably want to increase your carbs some. You can probably get up to 50 to 70 grams a day, maybe even up to 100. You probably don't need to be in ketosis all the time. I think there's benefits to being in ketosis, but I don't think you have to force yourself to be there constantly. I think you can go 1 week around 50 and another week maybe 70 to 80 or even 100. Again, this is going to depend on your age, your fitness level, your physical activity, and your level of insulin sensitivity. So monitor these things so that you can see if anything changes. You don't want to go in the direction that you don't like. Number 2, intermittent fasting. If you are insulin resistant, I suggest that you still keep about an 18-6 to a 16-8 feeding pattern, meaning that if you do a 16-8, that you eat all your meals during an 8-hour period, which leaves you 16 hours of fasting. Why would we do that? Because the most powerful factor in reversing insulin resistance is the fasting period, the time where you are eating 0 carbohydrates, where you're not stimulating insulin at all. Because you have to eat a lot, you might want to go to an 8-hour feeding window, because in 8 hours, you can easily put 2 meals. You might even be able to put 3 meals. Because if you need to eat a lot of calories, then you're going to need some time to do it. If you shorten that window too much, or people try to do OMAD, it is very, very difficult to get enough food into that 1 meal or that 1 feeding period. If you're insulin sensitive, I still suggest that you do a little bit of intermittent fasting, in that you give your body a rest between meals, because it is very, very healthy. It allows for your digestion to recover. It allows for you to not become insulin resistant. You might even, on some days, do like a 12-12 feeding pattern. If you want to try to get a lot of food in, then go 18-6, 16-8, or maybe even 12-12. Someone who's insulin sensitive, the only reason that you would want to do OMAD 1 meal a day or a longer fast is to try to get the benefits of autophagy. But you can't do that very often, because if you go long without food, then your body is going to lose that weight. For those who are insulin resistant but trying to increase their calories, if you have a hard time getting enough calories, getting enough fat in, then feel free to still do a bulletproof coffee in the morning. Feel free to have a few fat bombs or some keto snacks with that bulletproof coffee. Even if that is outside of your feeding window, if you wake up in the morning and it's still not your feeding window, you could still have that bulletproof coffee, because it has a minimal impact on insulin. Yes, it is breaking the fast, but what we're talking about is reversing insulin, and pure fat has an almost 0 impact on insulin. Next, we're going to talk about the structural mechanical aspect of this. So yes, exercise has a metabolic function. It still has a hormonal impact and a chemical impact, but it also has a brain impact. And we want to have the exercise is going to help the brain get more activated. An activated brain is going to help inhibit the stress response, which is going to make your digestion and your sleep and your recovery and your healing work better. The specific type of exercise that you want to do is you're not exercising to burn calories, obviously, because you're trying to get more calories. You're trying to burn less. That's the whole problem. You want to gain weight. But you also want to give the body a reason to build some more muscle. You have to load up the muscle. You have to challenge the muscles in order to give the body a reason to make more of them. So when you do weights, and you probably want to do that 2 to 3 times a week, you want to do few reps and high weights. Why? Because you want to challenge the muscles. You want to, if you load them up, if you have heavy weights, and you push the muscles to where they fail, but you don't keep it up very long, you do just a few reps, now you are spiking growth hormone. You're challenging the body, you're telling it, hey, you know, I put a lot of pressure on you, you'd better build some muscles so you can handle this better next time. Because I'm going to do this again and you'd better be prepared, so build some more muscles. And for that reason, you also want to avoid any long-term strenuous exercise. You don't want to do any anaerobic, you don't want to do any high heart rate activity for an extended period of time, because that will trigger cortisol, which is muscle wasting. It is virtually impossible to build muscle while you are exercising and doing like long distance running. Just look at the bodies of long distance runners. How much bulk muscle do they have? Not much. That's a clue. You do want to do some HIIT. If you're healthy enough to do it, high intensity interval training will spike growth hormone. The duration is so short that even though it's a high cortisol activity, the duration is so short you only secrete a tiny little bit, and the secretion of growth hormone far outweighs the detriment from the cortisol. But you want to keep it to a few minutes. You do a warm-up, you get all of your high-intensity stuff in a 2 to 3 to 4 minute period. You only do that twice a week. So the total HIIT for a week is only a few minutes altogether. You can also do aerobic exercise, but make sure that it is truly aerobic and not anaerobic. It should not wear you out. You should not be fatigued afterwards. So I would basically say keep it to walking, and don't try to power walk, don't try to walk fast. Just go for a stroll, and yes, you will burn some extra calories, so you have to eat even more to compensate for that. And number 4, that is the third side of the triangle, the emotional part. Emotional stress can be devastating. It increases cortisol, it interferes with digestion, it interferes with growth hormone, it shuts down your parasympathetic nervous system. So to reduce stress, we want to relax, we want to do breathing exercises, we want to do meditation. Just try a few, find one that you like, and do it on a regular basis. It's like a muscle that you're building. It's not just for the few minutes that you're listening and relaxing. It's a skill, it's a pattern that you program into your nervous system. And the better you get at chilling, the better you'll be able to resist, to handle stress in the future. Another technique is called emotional freedom technique, known as tapping. That's a very powerful way to interrupt a stress pattern. It's a very, very neurologically based mechanism. Tapping is a pattern interrupt. And if you combine that with retrieving emotions, then you can interrupt those. You can develop new emotional habits. If you enjoyed this video, I think you're going to love that one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.